ago. He frequently blamed the polls had been rigged. He served as Prime Minister to one of the...
On the morning of 15th October, Kenyans woke up to the tragic news of Raila Odinga's unexpected demise. He was a colossal figure in Kenyan politics. Let's delve into his story. Raila Amolo Odinga was born on 7th January 1945 in Maseno, Kisumu County, in the then British colony of Kenya. He was born to Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, a prominent Kenyan politician and independence activist, and to Mary Juma Odinga. He went to Kisumu Union Primary, Maranda Primary in Bondo, and Maranda High School, where he was enrolled at up until 1962, when he graduated from high school. He then embarked on a trip to Leipzig, East Germany, which is the socialist part of Germany during the Cold War. While in Germany, he enrolled at the Herder Institution, which taught foreign students German, and it was also part of the philological faculty at the University of Leipzig. He then subsequently received a scholarship in 1965, which took him to the Technical College of Magdeburg, where he obtained a master's degree in mechanical engineering. Upon the completion of his studies in East Germany, he returned to Kenya, where he found employment at the University of Nairobi as a lecturer of mechanical engineering. He also worked as an engineer at the Kenya Bureau of Standards, where he gradually ascended to the position of deputy director. When he returned to Kenya in 1970, the country had enjoyed 7 years of independence after British colonial rule. His father, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, was vice president under Jomo Kenyatta, who was the first president of the newly independent Republic of Kenya. By the time Odinga returned to Kenya, the political atmosphere was already charged, with his father Jaramogi and the president Jomo Kenyatta relationship deteriorating. You see, during this time, the Cold War was going on, and Jaramogi and Kenyatta were divided among ideological lines, with Jaramogi leaning more to the east and to socialism, while Kenyatta leaning more to the west and capitalism. The tension between the two escalated sharply as Jaramogi accused Kenyatta of betraying the objectives of independence by fostering and being part of the emergence of an elite wealthy class, while also simultaneously marginalizing ordinary citizens and also enriching his Kikuyu tribesmen. The tensions between these two eventually culminated in Jaramogi defecting from the KANU party and forming his own political party, the Kenya People's Union, also known as KPU. The Kenyatta government responded with harsh repression. KPU members were harassed, detained, or banned from political activity. In October 1969, after the Kisumu massacre, when Kenyatta's motorcade was attacked during a visit to Kisumu, the government banned KPU entirely. Jaramogi and many of his allies were detained without trial. Raila returned to this politically charged atmosphere in 1970, right in the aftermath of these events. His father was under house arrest, and the Odinga family was under constant state surveillance. This environment of political oppression, ethnic tensions, and ideological struggle strongly influenced Raila's later political activism and his lifelong advocacy for multi-party democracy and social justice. After tensions with the government, surveillance was imposed on the Odinga family and they became politically restricted. The young obscured Raila quietly observed all this from a distance, but the injustices he saw, including ethnic favoritism, suppression of dissent, and corruption, began shaping his political consciousness. In 1978, Kenyatta passed away and he was succeeded by his deputy, Daniel Arap Moi. At first, Moi promised a more open government, but as time progressed, his rule gradually became increasingly authoritarian. Raila, who had socialist leanings and a passion for reform, began associating with underground pro-democracy and socialist groups that criticized Moi's one-party rule. In 1982, a catastrophic event occurred that would shape and ultimately have a profound effect on Raila's political career. In that year, a coup attempt occurred. It was perpetrated by a faction in the National Air Force that consisted of junior Air Force officers led by a man called Hezekiah Ochuka, who was from the same Luo ethnic group that Raila and his family came from. After the coup's failure, the Moi government accused several civilians of having helped plan or inspire the coup, among them Raila Odinga. Raila was suspected of being among the coup plotters primarily because he had connections to radical intellectual circles at the University of Nairobi and was known for his leftist, pro-socialist leanings, ideologies similar to those of many coup sympathizers. The government claimed that he and others had met with Air Force officers including Hezekiah Ochuka and discussed possible regime change. Raila himself was accused of providing logistical support and being aware of the plan in advance, though he never took part in any armed action. Raila was arrested on August 11, 1982, 10 days after the coup attempt. He was detained without trial under Kenya's Public Security Act, which allowed indefinite detention. Despite intense interrogation and torture, no concrete evidence was ever presented in court linking him directly to the coup plot. However, Hezekiah Ochuka, who was recognized for being the principal perpetrator of the coup, fled to Tanzania, but he was later extradited back to Kenya. After a lengthy military trial, he was convicted of treason and hanged in 1987, along with Sergeant Okumu and others. Raila, however, remained in detention until 1988, when he was released after 6 years. The coup attempt had major consequences. Moi used it to consolidate his power, purge the Air Force, and crack down on all dissent. Many academics and activists, especially those linked to socialism or the Odinga family, were detained or exiled. For Raila, their experience transformed him into a hardened pro-democracy activist. He later said that detention deepened his resolve to fight for freedom of expression, political pluralism, and justice in Kenya. After 6 years in detention, Raila Odinga was released in February 1988, but his life was far from free. He was kept under constant surveillance by Moi security apparatus. His passport was confiscated and his movements were restricted. He was barred from holding public office or speaking at political rallies. Despite these restrictions, Raila quietly began reconnecting with other reform-minded figures, including university lecturers, lawyers, and former detainees. By the late 1980s, President Daniel Arap Moi's regime had become increasingly repressive and unpopular. Corruption, nepotism, and police brutality were rampant. Kenya was still a de facto one-party state under KANU. Intellectuals and clergy began publicly criticizing the regime. Internationally, the end of the Cold War also changed things. Western donors who had tolerated African dictators during the Cold War now demanded political reforms in exchange for economic aid. Inside Kenya, this external pressure combined with domestic discontent to fuel a new wave of opposition. In 1990, several courageous leaders openly called for multi-party democracy, which included Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Charles Rubia, Kenneth Matiba, and George Anoya. Their demands sparked national-wide protests. The government's response was brutal. Matiba, Rubia, and other activists were detained. The Sabasaba July 7, 1990 riots broke out, named after the date when pro-democracy protests were violently crushed by police. Dozens were killed and hundreds injured or arrested. Raila Odinga was again detained in 1989 and released in 1991, making it his third detention. This only emboldened his resolve. After his 1991 release, the government continued to target reformists. Fearing for his life, Raila fled to Norway. While in exile, he lobbied the international community to pressure Moi's regime. He worked closely with human rights groups and Kenyan exiles to highlight political repression at home. His efforts helped increase global scrutiny of Moi's government. Under mounting domestic protests, economic collapse, and pressure from Western donors, President Moi finally gave in. On December 2, 1991, Parliament repealed Section 2A of the Kenyan Constitution, which had made KANU the only legal party since 1982. This historic change restored multi-party democracy after nearly a decade of one-party rule. Immediately afterward, opposition groups began forming new political parties. Raila returned from exile in early 1992, joining his father's party, the Forum for the Restoration of Democracy, FORD, which had been founded in 1991 as a leading opposition movement. However, internal divisions soon split FORD into two main factions: FORD Kenya, led by Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Raila's father; FORD Asili, led by Kenneth Matiba. The split weakened the opposition. In the December 1992 general election, Kenya's first multi-party election since independence, Moi won with about 36% of the vote, benefiting from a divided opposition. Jaramogi came fourth, but the movement was still historic. It marked the return of political pluralism to Kenya after years of dictatorship. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Raila's father, passed away on January 20, 1994, at the age of 82. After the 1992 multi-party elections, Jaramogi remained the leader of FORD Kenya and the de facto head of the opposition. Despite not winning the presidency, he had reclaimed his national stature as the father of opposition politics, symbolizing resistance to authoritarian rule. However, internal wrangles within FORD Kenya weakened the party. Tensions grew between Jaramogi's allies, including Raila and Kijana Wamalwa, his deputy, over control of the party. Jaramogi died suddenly of a heart attack at his home in Kisumu. His death left a huge vacuum in the opposition and within the Odinga family's political legacy. Leadership of FORD Kenya passed to Michael Kijana Wamalwa, silencing Raila and leading to internal divisions. Raila found himself politically isolated and increasingly disillusioned with the party's direction. After disputes with Wamalwa over succession, Raila left FORD Kenya in 1996. He then formed a new political vehicle, National Development Party (NDP). Through the NDP, Raila began to rebuild his political base, especially in Nyanza province, and appealed to younger, reformed-minded Kenyans. In a surprising twist, Raila allied himself with President Daniel Moi, his former jailer, between 1998 and 2001. NDP merged with the ruling KANU party in 2001, and Raila was appointed Minister of Energy. This move was strategic. Raila sought to influence reform from within government, while Moi hoped to tap into Raila's popularity in Nyanza. However, this alliance was short-lived. As Moi's presidency neared its end, as he was constitutionally barred from another term, he endorsed Uhuru Kenyatta, then a relatively inexperienced politician, as his successor and KANU's presidential candidate. This decision angered many senior KANU leaders, including Raila. In protest, Raila and other disgruntled KANU figures, known as the Rainbow Alliance, defected from KANU. They joined forces with the opposition under Mwai Kibaki to form a new coalition, the National Rainbow Coalition (NARC). At a massive rally at Uhuru Park in Nairobi in October 2002, Raila declared the famous words, "Kibaki Tosha, Kibaki is the one." That endorsement united the opposition behind a single candidate for the first time in Kenyan history. In the December 2002 general elections, the NARC coalition defeated KANU decisively. Mwai Kibaki became Kenya's third president, ending KANU's 40-year rule since independence. Raila Odinga's endorsement and mobilization of grassroots support was seen as pivotal to that victory. After the victory, Raila became Minister for Roads, Public Works and Housing in Kibaki's new government. However, the tensions later emerged between Raila's faction and Kibaki's camp, leading eventually to the 2005 constitutional referendum split and the formation of ODM, Orange Democratic Movement. After the 2002 election victory, Kenyans were euphoric. The National Remo Coalition (NARC) had ended 40 years of KANU dominance. Raila Odinga was hailed as a hero of change, widely credited for uniting the opposition under Mwai Kibaki. However, this unity was short-lived. Before the election, NARC leaders had signed a Memorandum of Understanding (MOU), promising to share power and pursue constitutional reforms to reduce presidential powers. According to the MOU, Raila's side, the Liberal Democratic Party (LDP), was to get significant cabinet roles and a new prime minister's post was to be created. Once in office, President Kibaki's camp, mainly the DP wing, ignored much of the agreement. This led to growing mistrust. Raila and his allies accused Kibaki of betraying the reform agenda and centralizing power in his inner circle known as the Mount Kenya Mafia. Kenyans had long demanded a new constitution to replace the independence-era document that concentrated too much power in the presidency. The Bomas draft, supported by Raila and civil society, proposed devolution, a parliamentary system, and checks on presidential power. However, when Kibaki's team revised it at the Naivasha and Kilifi conferences, they removed key reforms, producing what became known as a Wako draft, named after the Attorney General Amos Wako. Raila and his allies rejected the Wako draft, campaigning for a no vote, symbolized by the orange. Kibaki's side campaigned for a yes vote, symbolized by the banana. When the referendum was held in November 2005, the no orange side won decisively, a humiliating defeat for Kibaki. This resulted in Kibaki sacking Raila and other LDP ministers from his cabinet. Raila's camp broke away completely and began building a new political movement, the Orange Democratic Movement (ODM), inspired by the referendum symbol. By 2007, ODM had become the main opposition party. Raila Odinga was chosen as its presidential candidate to face President Kibaki, who was seeking re-election under the Party of National Unity (PNU). The campaign was fierce and emotional, centered on corruption under Kibaki's government, for example, the Anglo leasing scandal, ethnic inequality, and demands for devolution. Raila's message of change and Majimboism, regional governance, resonated strongly, especially in western and coastal Kenya. The December 27, 2007 general election saw massive voter turnout. Early tallies showed Raila leading in most regions. However, the Electoral Commission of Kenya abruptly stopped releasing results for hours and later declared Kibaki the winner. International observers, including the EU and African Union, reported serious irregularities and possible rigging. The announcement of Kibaki's victory on December 30, 2007 triggered nationwide chaos. Protests erupted in Nairobi, Kisumu, Eldoret, Naivasha, and Nakuru. Violence quickly took on an ethnic dimension, putting communities seen as supporting ODM against those aligned with PNU. Over 1,100 people were killed and over 600,000 displaced. Kenya's worst political and humanitarian crisis since independence. Both sides accused each other of ethnic incitement and organizing militias. The country teetered on the brink of civil war. After weeks of international mediation led by former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, the two sides reached an agreement on February 28, 2008. The deal created a coalition government between PNU and ODM. The position of Prime Minister for Raila Odinga, two deputy prime ministers, one from each side, Uhuru Kenyatta and Musalia Mudavadi, a framework for constitutional reform and truth and reconciliation. On April 17, 2008, Raila Odinga was sworn in as Kenya's second prime minister, sharing executive power with President Kibaki, a delicate balance meant to restore stability. The 2008 power-sharing government was fragile but managed to stabilize the country and restore peace. It oversaw key reforms, including the drafting of the 2010 constitution, which introduced devolution, a bicameral parliament, and stronger checks on the presidency. the very ideals Raila had fought for. However, tensions between ODM and PNU persisted throughout the coalition's life. By the time of the 2013 elections, Kenya had a new constitutional framework, a restructured judiciary, and a devolved government system. Legacies born out of that painful crisis. After serving as Prime Minister from 2008 to 2013 in the Grand Coalition government, Raila sought the presidency again in the first election under Kenya's new 2010 constitution. Here's the context. The 2010 constitution had been one of Raila's greatest achievements. It introduced devolution, a Bill of Rights, and limits on presidential power. The new system created 47 county governments, giving local regions more autonomy. The 2013 elections were thus a major test of Kenya's new democratic order. The main contenders were Raila Odinga, leading the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy, Quad, a coalition of ODM, Wiper, and Ford Kenya. Uhuru Kenyatta leading the Jubilee Alliance with William Ruto as his running mate. Both Uhuru and Ruto were facing charges at the International Criminal Court, ICC, for alleged involvement in the 2007-2008 post-election violence, but they ran nonetheless. The results were as follows. On March 4, 2013, Uhuru Kenyatta was declared the winner with 50.07% of the vote, just above the 50+1 threshold needed to avoid a runoff. Raila garnered 43.7% of the vote. Raila rejected the results, citing massive irregularities in vote transmission systems. He petitioned the Supreme Court, but the court upheld Uhuru's victory. He conceded peacefully, marking a shift towards political maturity. After the 2013 defeat, Raila became the face of Kenya's opposition politics, using parliament and mass mobilization to hold the government accountable. The key issues he highlighted included corruption scandals, e.g. Eurobond, NYS, electoral injustice and biased institutions, and also marginalization of certain regions. In 2017, as the next election approached, he helped form a new alliance, NASA, National Super Alliance, which brought together ODM, Wiper, ANC, and Ford Kenya. The August 8, 2017 elections saw Raila once again face Uhuru Kenyatta. The IEBC, Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, declared Uhuru the winner with 54% to Raila's 44%. Raila's NASA coalition alleged massive electronic manipulation and vote rigging, citing irregularities in the transmission system. Raila's legal team filed a historic petition, and on September 1, 2017, the Supreme Court of Kenya annulled the election results, citing illegalities and irregularities in the electoral process. This was the first time in African history that a presidential election was nullified by court. The decision was widely praised internationally as a bold step for judicial independence. The Supreme Court ordered a fresh election within 60 days. However, Raila boycotted the rerun on October 26, 2017, arguing that the IEBC had not implemented necessary reforms to ensure fairness. Uhuru Kenyatta won the repeat poll with over 98% of the vote, but turnout was very low, about 39%. Raila's supporters rejected the results and tension remained high. In early 2018, Raila took a dramatic symbolic step. On January 30, 2018, he swore himself in as a people's president at Uhuru Park, Nairobi, an act of protest against what he called stolen elections. The event drew huge crowds and heightened fears of renewed instability. Then, in a surprising turn, on March 9, 2018, Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta met at Harambee House and shook hands, a gesture that shocked the nation. The handshake marked the start of a political truce and a national unity initiative known as the Bridges Initiative, BBI. The objectives of the handshake and BBI were to heal ethnic and political divisions, address election-related tensions, and to propose constitutional and governance reforms, such as a restructured executive and inclusivity measures. Although BBI was later struck down by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional in 2021, the handshake significantly reduced political violence and improved national stability. Between 2018 and 2022, Raila transitioned from being seen as a perpetual oppositionist to a senior statesman, working alongside his former rival. He gained international recognition for promoting national unity. However, the handshake also divided his traditional support base, as some felt he had gone soft on government corruption and abandoned the opposition's role. This set the stage for the 2022 elections, where William Ruto, formerly Uhuru's deputy, and Raila Odinga faced off again, but this time with Raila endorsed by Uhuru himself. By 2022, Kenya's political landscape had completely shifted. Uhuru Kenyatta, now finishing his second and final term, broke ranks with his deputy, William Ruto, and endorsed Raila Odinga for president. This unexpected alliance led to the formation of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition, bringing together over 20 parties, including ODM, Jubilee, Wiper, KANU, and NARC Kenya. Raila ran on a message of unity, social justice, and anti-corruption, promising a social protection fund for vulnerable families, greater devolution support, and the continuation of Uhuru's infrastructure projects. William Ruto, on the other hand, ran as an outsider under the Kenya Kwanza Alliance, championing the hustler versus dynasty narrative, portraying Raila and Uhuru as part of the elite that had ruled Kenya since independence. The election took place on August 9, 2022. After days of tension and internal division at the Electoral Commission, IBC Chair Wafula Chebukati declared William Ruto the winner, with Ruto winning 50.49% of the vote and Raila garnering 48.85% of the vote. Raila and his Azimio coalition rejected the results, claiming irregularities and manipulation of vote tallies. He filed a petition at the Supreme Court which upheld Ruto's victory, ruling that the election was conducted in accordance with the law. Although disappointed, Raila again accepted the ruling peacefully, avoiding arrest, a testament to his statesmanship. He, however, vowed to continue fighting for electoral justice and institutional reforms. In early 2023, Raila reemerged as a face of opposition politics to the Azimio la Umoja coalition. He raised key issues such as high cost of living under Ruto's government, lack of transparency in the 2022 elections, calls for reforms within the IBC. Raila led county-wide demonstrations in March to July 2023, demanding lower food prices and a reconstituted IBC. The protests drew huge crowds but also clashed with police, resulting in casualties and arrests. Eventually, the government and Azimio agreed to a bipartisan dialogue in parliament to discuss reforms. Through 2024, Raila has continued to influence national politics, balancing between opposition leadership and continental diplomacy. The bipartisan talks between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza have produced limited consensus but helped calm political tensions. Raila remained critical of the government's economic policies, particularly taxation and governance issues. Raila had also taken on a growing continental leadership role. In 2024, he received endorsement from the East African Community and several African heads of state for the position of chairperson of the African Union Commission, a powerful diplomatic post that oversees continental policy and integration efforts. His candidacy for AUC symbolized his evolution from national dissident to Pan-African statesman, respected across the continent for for his long-standing fight for democracy, justice and unity. Raila was truly the enigma of Kenyan politics, even though he never occupied the office of president, which he extremely coveted. He was simultaneously the biggest political figure of his time and profoundly impacted Kenya with his activism, which yielded tremendous results, such as the 2010 constitution. With his demise, he has undoubtedly left a massive void in Kenyan politics, but his legacy and name will be eternally venerated in Kenya and the continent at large. Thank you for watching. This was African Icons. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.